We're starting off with Caesars Palace Grand Prix by Randall Cannon, who's joining us via Zoom from Reno, Nevada, and it's very early in the morning there. All right. Good morning, Randy. Hang on here. Randy, are you muted on your end?
Bob, testing.
We can hear you now. We can hear you now.
I show a live mic on my end.
All right, hold on one second.
Thank you.
What are we doing here? Why is that full screen?
Just close it.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. No, we're good there. Let's see if he can hear us. Randy, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
How are we doing?
Great. We can hear you. You can go ahead and share your screen and get started.
Very good. Bob, I should be at about 25 minutes, and then I'd like to do a quick reading from one of the chapters. Should be about 27 minutes total.
Okay, very good, Randy. Thanks.
You see me on screen, Bob? Presentation?
Yes, just make it full screen. Oops.
I am full screen. Are you seeing full screen, Bob?
Seeing you full screen, but not your presentation yet.
Okay. Bear with me. Okay.
Now there we go.
There we go.
Okay, you're all set.
Very good. Good morning, attendees. It's my honor to be here for the 6th Michael R. Getzinger Symposium for International Motor Racing History. I'm going to talk to you this morning about my current book, Caesars Palace Grand Prix, as Bob introduced. The subtitle is Las Vegas Organized Crime and the Pinnacle of Motorsport. I'm going to walk you through my approach to the research, some of the threads of history that culminated in the Caesars Palace Grand Prix, and then we'll connect a few dots forward to the return of Formula One to Las Vegas next year after a 40-year absence for the 2023 Las Vegas Grand Prix. I jumped into this project by going back to my original programs. I did get to attend the 81 and 82 Formula One events and the 1983 Kart IndyCar event. I kind of wanted to see what players, what actors I had to work with for the thesis as I wanted to develop it. I started with Cliff Perlman. I remember him from my youth in Las Vegas. He certainly had alleged organized crime connections, most notably to the financial kingpin of the organized crime syndicate at the time, Meyer Lansky, and the alleged heir apparent to Meyer Lansky, a fellow named Alvin Malnick, who is actually still with us. He was mentioned on the infamous ABSCAM reportings of the late 70s, as were Lansky and Malnick and Caesars Palace. He was the chairman of the board of Caesars Palace at the time of the 1981 Formula One event, and was the CEO of the parent corporation, Caesars World. Next, I saw Harry Wald. He was an original 1966 investor in the development and setup of the Caesars Palace Resort, a gambling licensee, a very shadowy background. At the time of the first Formula One event, he was the CEO of Caesars Palace. He was a fixture on the Caesars Palace campus for nearly 2 decades. This one caught me off guard. I had no recollection of this from the time period, but Chris Pook is there in the program, the founder of the Long Beach Grand Prix Association and the Long Beach Grand Prix itself. He was the Grand Prix consultant for the Caesars Palace events, the first 3 at least, and was very involved in the development of the program and the operations of the event. Down at the bottom here, really an interesting aside, Dr. Jeffrey McDonald, the convicted Fatal Vision murderer, for those who remember the book and movie of the same name. He was the Caesars Palace Grand Prix medical consultant. He had the same role for the Long Beach Grand Prix. And this fellow had a chance to meet William D. Weinberger, Bill Weinberger, the son of William S. Weinberger, a very prominent Cleveland family who came out to Las Vegas to work in gambling operations. I got to meet Bill, interviewed him extensively, and he was extremely generous, sharing his recollections of the events, including his interactions with Bernie Ecclestone, and just a very, very nice, honorable man. He was the vice president of casino marketing. The Grand Prix, the Formula One Grand Prix events were organized by Bill and flowed completely from his desk. From there, I kind of focused in on Cliff Perlman and Harry Walden. I wanted to see just how visible they were at the Formula One events. And they were very visible, right there on the podium. Cliff Perlman kind of front and center, along with his Meyer Lansky and Alvin Malnick connections. And there's Harry Wald with his shadowy background up there, along with Alan Jones, the winner of the 1981 Caesars Palace Grand Prix. He was the departing Formula One world champion, driving for the Frank Williams team. Alain Prost was second for Renault. Bruno Giacomelli kind of tucked back in there. I enjoyed researching Bruno. He finished third. It was the only podium of his Formula One career. He was driving for the Alfa Romeo team alongside Mario Andretti in 1981. And Mario, as we will see, kind of forms his own thread of history as Formula One travels through America and onto the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. From there, I kind of took a three overlapping circles Venn diagram approach to the research. I knew I had a Las Vegas story. I did not yet know what the national and international connections of this story would be, but there were many. I knew I was dealing with aspects of organized crime, certainly in the backstory of the development of the Caesars Palace property, but there were many, and they ran all the way through to the running of the events by way of Cliff Perlman and his connections. And ultimately, I knew I had an F1 story, the pinnacle of motorsport. And so at the sweet spot, the overlap of the circles, that's where I developed the story of the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. Both the organized crime thread and the Formula One thread start in the immediate post-World War II period. This photo should be somewhat familiar to this audience, certainly the Symposium organizers. The October 1948 American Grand Prix at Watkins Glen. I call it the American Grand Prix because the press called it the American Grand Prix, also known as the Watkins Glen Grand Prix. The history of Formula One flows forward from this day, the history of Formula One in America, and I thank the IMRRC for the use of this image as well as several others throughout the book. On the organized crimes side of the show, the story starts out similarly in the immediate post-World War II period. This is Meyer Lansky. He was roughly number 3 in the strata of the National Organized Crime Syndicate after Charles Lucky Luciano and Don Vito Genovese. His alleged heir apparent was Alvin Malnick, who we will visit a little bit later, and he had very close alleged connections to Cliff Perlman. It was the foot soldiers of Meyer Lansky and of Don Vito Genovese that developed and financed Caesars Palace. The quote here is instructive. I took it to further my research into gambling operations around the world, including where Bernie Ecclestone plied his gambling pensions at Crockford's in the Mayfair gambling district of London. and indeed Meyer Lansky had his hands in all of them. I really enjoyed following the path of Formula One through America and the early influencers. Alec Ullman was the organizer of the 1959 and 1960 Formula One Grand Prix in America. Here at Sebring, the first 1959, a very young winner, Bruce McLaren, Jack Brabham, was the world champion. Moving on to 1960 in Riverside, Alec Ullman was once again the organizer. Jack Brabham in the lead here. This event was won by Sterling Moss. I started to find organized crime connections in places I did not think I would find them. The then owner of Riverside Raceway, owner and president Roy Jean Lewis, prominent Mercedes dealer in the Southland, he had organized crime connections and got involved in Teamsters financed property development, and his fraud in that property development sent him to prison. He also had gambling connections in Nevada, connections that would lead directly to Caesars Palace. A pretty fascinating bit of research for me there. Alec Ullman organized the first 2 Formula One Grand Prix in America. The next 20 were organized and presented by the Watkins Glen Grand Prix Corporation. I really enjoyed this body of research. This is the 1961 event won by Innes Ireland. I believe it was the only win of his Formula One career. Here we see Sterling Moss in the number 7 vehicle, the Lotus Climax, and beyond him, we see Bruce McLaren in the number 2 Cooper Climax. A long, time-honored run of Formula One, but the 20-year run of Formula One at Watkins Glen also spelled the transition to Caesars Palace, which is an integral part of the storyline. At Watkins Glen historian Bill Green talked to me about the early safety and security director, Charles Kress, and that turned into an organized crime thread, if you will. In 1957, there was a very infamous, I should say, mafia gathering at Appalachian at the home of Joseph Barbera. And Charles Kress, the safety director for the Watkins Glen Grand Prix Corporation, had investigated Joseph Barbera for murder back in Kress's law enforcement career. And at the time of that 1957 mafia gathering in Appalachian, he became extremely vocal about the rise of mafia in the eastern states, and was very vocal in his concerns to Governor Harriman at the time. The 20-year run of Formula One came to an end. Formula One at Watkins Glen came to an end in 1980. Here's Mario Andretti, his last year with the Lotus team, and just beyond him is the eccentric and somewhat criminal himself, David Thiem, the Essex sponsor of the Lotus team, cheering Mario Andretti on. And beyond him, you can see Colin Chapman. Again, Mario Andretti kind of forms his own thread throughout the story, and I'll talk about him a little bit later. Part of my research, I dug deeply into the files of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Securities and Exchange Commission, every organized crime commission I could get my hands on. This was a really instructive document. Here are the FBI documents. One of the Meyer Lansky foot soldiers, Jerome Zarowitz, and his positioning in the development of Caesars Palace. And he mentions a couple of other fellows, Vincent, Jimmy Blue Eyes Allo, and Anthony Fat Tony Salerno of the Don Vito Genovese crime family, one of the 5 New York families. They are entrenched in the financing of Caesars Palace, buying hidden concealed ownership points in Caesars Palace. A very instructive document. And the essential rub here is that they're all complaining that the public development fronts, Jay Sarno and Nate Jacobson, have not put in any money yet they are being credited publicly with bringing everything together at Caesars Palace. Interesting photo from probably late 1965, the underground construction, the foundation construction of Caesars Palace. There's our friend Harry Wald, who we saw 15 years later on the podium of the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. Harry is joined by Nate Jacobson and Jay Sarno. Jacobson and Sarno had a vast series of organized crime connections and were both very prolific borrowers from the Teamsters Central States Pension Fund. The basement construction that we see there also contained the somewhat infamous bunker boardroom of Caesars Palace, where Bernie Ecclestone signed the contract for the 81 Formula One event with Clifford Perlman and Bill Weinberger. Caesars was unabashed in their tease to their resort, an orgy of excitement. This is advertising the grand opening of Caesars on August 5th, 1966. Here we see Nate Jacobson, and he asked for this photo with none other than Jimmy Hoffa, the head of the Teamsters, the president of the Teamsters Union. By now, Jimmy Hoffa had been convicted in his federal fraud trial and was about 4 months away from reporting to prison. After the discharge of prison, we all know how that turned out for Jimmy Hoffa, but he was front and center at the table of honor at the Caesars Palace Caesars Palace Resort, I should say. And it's a very telling image of just what Caesar was made of. The book includes some period picture postcard views of the Las Vegas Valley for anyone who has been there of late. All of this property has been developed over. The dunes that we see here was demolished in the 1990s to make way for Steve Wynn's Bellagio. The Bellagio stands there now. That'll be one of the fixture resorts at the 2023 Las Vegas Grand Prix. They're one of the promotional partners. Just beyond that dune sign is where Caesars Palace was developed. And at the kind of center right of the image is where turn one of the Formula One circuit would tuck right up. The Caesars Palace Grand Prix consultant. He had a 4-year deal. He was terminated prior to the '84 kart IndyCar event at Caesars. The quote at the bottom was telling. It was from his early run at Long Beach when he was still promoting Formula One there. As he rubbed the opinion makers in Long Beach, somewhere between dynamic and brilliant, con man and thief. And that's kind of what he left town with as the Long Beach Grand Prix Association transitioned to Jim McCallion, very controversial individual. I was able to touch base with Chris about some aspects of the book, and very, very interesting thread there. I want to mention that as Chris Pook, in the very week that Chris Pook was seeking approval from the Long Beach City Council for the Grand Prix concept, Caesars Palace influencers were also in town seeking leases aboard the Queen Mary, the retail properties on the Queen Mary, and both of those overtures in Long Beach invited the attention of the Department of Justice Organized Crime Task Force, both the Grand Prix and the Caesars Palace influencers. Back to Mario. I enjoyed putting as much Mario in the book as I could. This is the 1975 Formula 5000 event, the first Long Beach Grand Prix and the kind of the preamble event to the first Formula One Long Beach Grand Prix. I enjoyed following Formula One through America, and it was interesting to see the rub between Long Beach and Watkins Glen and how Bernie Ecclestone kind of leveraged both of those off of each other. Mario Andretti won the 1977 Long Beach Grand Prix. Here he is leading Niki Lauda in the Ferrari. I believe they finished about that close. Mario Andretti's win, I believe it to this date, is still the only win by an American in a Formula One event on American soil. I believe that to be true, and it completely entrenched the presence, the awareness of Formula One in the American consciousness. I found it interesting that as the Caesars Palace Grand Prix transitioned between '82 and '83 from Formula One to IndyCar, a year later, so did Long Beach transition from Formula One to IndyCar. These were big stories of the time, and they also pointed up the splits between USAC and CART, and also FOCA and FISA on the Formula One side. And it also pointed up the influence of Bernie Ecclestone in driving the licensing fees, the promotional fees for a Formula One event. At the time, his fees were about 3 times the fee of a kart IndyCar event, whereas the kart IndyCar drivers became much more well-known. They were much easier to advertise on TV than most of the F1 drivers. This is the groundbreaking ceremony of the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. Caesars Palace Grand Prix. We're now into 81. And once again, I'm sorry, let me back up. The white-haired gentleman in the center of the image, none other than Harry Wald, and his deep shadowy background. Just left of Harry is Bill Weinberger, who I got to interview extensively again. Very interesting image. This is an image of construction. This is probably July of 1981. Temperatures are probably 110 to 115 degrees. This is taken from the 27-story fantasy tower of Caesars Palace, which was built about 1979, 1980. It still stands today as the Caesars Palace Forum Tower. Contrary to popular belief, Formula One cars did not race on parking lot asphalt. As you can see, the construction crews excavated a section of FIA spec base and asphalt, and all of the turns were profiled to FIA specifications. It was constructed through the parking lot. The dirt property beyond was actually owned by the former Howard Hughes Tool Company and was leased to Caesars Palace for the running of the Grand Prix events. This is an image looking east, pretty much opposite from where we were. This is also taken from the Fantasy Tower. The hairpin turn at the left center of the image is turn one of the Formula One circuit. It was also turn one of the IndyCar circuit, as the twisting Formula One circuit was converted to a 5-turn roval for IndyCar. Got some interesting period resort properties here at the right of the image. That's the left end of the Flamingo Hilton, originally opened as the Fabulous Flamingo by Bugsy Siegel in 1948. It transitioned through a few owners, including a bit of Meyer Lansky along the way. But those are the retail shops of the then Flamingo Hilton. Next is the Imperial Palace, developed by the very controversial Ralph Ingolstad. The Holiday Inn, going vertical, it later became a Harrah's. And over at the left side of the image is the round tower of the world-famous Sands Hotel Casino. That is the Sands as it appeared during the 1950s, 1960s Rat Pack era, where Brian Dean, Sammy, and the boys played in the Copa showroom. Beyond that is the Las Vegas Hilton, originally developed by Kirk Kerkorian as the International. And that contained the showroom where Elvis used to play. The Caesars Palace Grand Prix was a star-studded event, much as the 2023 Las Vegas Grand Prix will be. This is actor Morgan Fairchild visiting with Leroy Neiman, the great American impressionist. Mr. Neiman painted the program art and poster art for the first 3 Caesars Palace Grand Prix events. This is a very instructive image. I'm going to sit here for a minute. In the mid-1970s, Caesars World, the parent corporation, sold some honeymoon resorts in the Poconos to none other than Alvin Malnick, the alleged heir apparent to the mob financial kingpin Meyer Lansky. And Caesars sold the resorts to Malnick, retained the Caesars branding, and then leased them back from Malnick. As Bill Weinberger explained it to me many times, Caesars needed the liquidity of the sale at the time and needed to protract the operating costs of the resorts. It was very instructive to me that Alvin Malnick got a 100% Teamsters mortgage for those resorts. So once again, Caesars was paying down a Teamsters mortgage just as they had on the original resort. And here's Alvin Malnick's Caesars owned properties. This signage ran through the 4 years of the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. At the left of the image is the signage of the Caesars Palace Boardwalk Regency in Atlantic City. Cliff Perlman got in deep with the New Jersey Casino Control Commission for his dalliances with Malnick and his alleged association with Meyer Lansky. And the New Jersey Casino Control Commission eventually led to his removal from Caesars World and his Las Vegas position at Caesars Palace. It was quite the story of the time. The events themselves, I enjoyed reliving them as I got to attend them. This is Alan Jones, the winner of the 1981 Caesars Palace Grand Prix, driving for the Frank Williams team. Again, he was the departing Formula One world champion. The Saudi sponsorships on the Williams team are noteworthy. These were the companies of the Saudi royal family and their proxies, and thus began a 40-year walk through the desert from this point in history to the emergence of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in 2021. I think someone should start a research project on that 40-year run right there. Just saying. The 1982 event, the last of the Formula One events, Caesars Palace, was very popularly won by a very young Michele Alboreto, driving for Ken Tyrrell's squad. The first Formula One win by a Tyrrell in quite some time, a few years. In '83, the Caesars Palace Grand Prix transitioned from Formula One to IndyCar. Mario Andretti was DNF at the Formula One events, not a fan of that twisting circuit with the, I believe he said the turbo Ferrari he drove in '82 was pushing 1,000 horsepower. He suffered a driveline failure at almost the same spot in both those events. But in '83, Mario won the kart IndyCar event. He was a big fan of the IndyCar roval at Caesars Palace, as one might imagine. In this image, we see Teo Fabi at the front, John Paul Jr., the late John Paul Jr. in second place, Derek Daly third, and there's Mario in his Newman-Haas Lola in fourth. This was the first year of the Newman-Haas team, and as Mario described it to me, he's the one who brought the parties together. It was a match made in heaven, and history certainly supports that. In '84, this was the last of the run, another kart IndyCar event. In this one, Mario finished second. Tom Sneva won the event. Mario claimed his first IndyCar championship in 15 years since 1969, the year that he also won the Indy 500. In this image, we see Mario Andretti on the point, Danny Sullivan, Bobby Rahal, Emerson Fittipaldi, Tom Sneva, and at the back there in the red and white Budweiser, or Miller car, I'm sorry, that's Al Unser Jr. There are 9 Indy 500 victories and 3 Formula One World Championships captured in this image. Quite an image. And that was the end of the run. I then moved on in the last chapter of the book to ponder the many overtures to bring Formula One back to Las Vegas over the last 40 years. This one appeared in the 1995 Indy 500 program. It pitched a Formula One season finale for '96, racing down the Las Vegas Strip. The host property would have been the MGM Grand. The starting grid is right there in the foreground of the photo on Koval Lane. The 2023 Las Vegas Grand Prix will race down the Las Vegas Strip and Koval Lane, kind of off to the right of where this is pictured. This event obviously did not happen. In the last chapter, I also identified this fellow, Farad Shafar. This photo is the only one that is the only one of the photos up to this point that's not in the book. In the early 2010s, he was alleged to have a contract with Bernie Ecclestone to return Formula One to Las Vegas. He did sign a non-disclosure agreement with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority and their ad agency, and basically locked down Formula One in Las Vegas. It went nowhere. Obviously, no Formula One events happened in that time frame, but it did produce a lawsuit. This lawsuit was somewhat famously filed in March of last year, and the plaintiff was Formula One. Formula One, Liberty Media of America of the U.S. had acquired Formula One in 2017. They wanted badly to return Formula One to Las Vegas, and they sued Farad Shafar and his P2M Motorsports company to break through their non-disclosure agreements with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority and their ad agency, and wound up holding harmless the LVCVA, and then LVCVA joined the lawsuit. One of the gems from the lawsuit was this piece of writing. This was in the discovery between Bernie Ecclestone and Farad Shafar, which does everything but sign a contract. Bernie Ecclestone dangles out the prospect of a contract, and as Bill Weinberger explained to me, Bernie did that many times throughout history. He would let anyone think that they were the would-be promoter of a Formula One event, unless and until it was time to come up with the money, and then he would be gone in a flash. But it's a very interesting piece of writing. And here in 2013, Bernie Ecclestone badly wants Formula One to return to Las Vegas, and he definitely wants it to run down the Las Vegas Strip. The lawsuit was settled in July of 2022, and an interesting Las Vegas story arose. Las Vegas investigative journalist Jeff German wrote for the largest daily in town, broke in July of 2022 that the lawsuit had settled. 1 month later, Jeff German is stabbed to death in front of his home in Las Vegas. The prime suspect is a local politician. It's just one of many, many such Las Vegas stories in the lore of Las Vegas, and here's one added to it, and it becomes part of the lead-in to the 2023 Las Vegas Grand Prix. We'll see how it goes. They're a year before the event, they're throwing around big, huge numbers. Ticket prices are tenfold over the most expensive ticket at the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. It will be interesting to see if the event moves the needle in the casino. The Caesars Palace Grand Prix did not. It's a nice image that was put together by track designer Herman Tilk. The current Caesars Palace campus is in the beyond there, and at the left of the image is the Bellagio. They're both sponsorship partners for the 2023 Las Vegas Grand Prix. Bob, with that, I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to do a quick read, if I may.
Sure.
We doing okay on time?
Yes, we're good.
Okay.
And we got time for questions and answers?
I've got about two and a half minutes of read, and then I'll be done.
Go ahead.
I'm going to do a quick read from Chapter 8. After I'd submitted the manuscript to the publisher, I sent Chapter 8 to Duke R. Getzinger. I wanted to get his read on it, and he and JC turned it into a very nice editorial review that made it on the back of the book. Chapter 8 is roughly the events of 1980, and there was supposed to be a Caesars Palace Grand Prix in 1980. It did not happen. The title is Trumpets and Tribunals, the Caesars Palace Grand Prix that wasn't the final U.S. Grand Prix at Watkins Glen, the many stains upon Caesar. The announcement by the Shah of Formula One racing Britisher Bernard Ecclestone that Watkins Glen should be replaced by Las Vegas, rang the reports, has raised quite a storm of protest in the colonies. Indeed, international efforts to scuttle the U.S. Grand Prix at Watkins Glen in favor of an event at Las Vegas dominated the Formula One winter break headed into 1980. The global gambit also pointed up the futility of the ACUS delegation to FISA, certainly with respect to the fortunes of the U.S. Grand Prix. Further, the potential loss of Watkins Glen as the East Coast outpost of Formula One incited one of the most acerbic voices in the annals of American automotive journalism. This pathetic urge for approval by our European peers has reached the point of absurdity, wrote Brock Yates. We seem prepared to flagellate ourselves with a lunatic frenzy in order to receive the benediction from a tin horn like Ecclestone. At the same time, Yates, the incendiary editor of Car and Driver, saved some flame for the split state of affairs in homeland open-wheel racing. Yet our so-called ruling authority, the ACUS, continued Yates, stands back in helpless disregard while USAC and CART render out the most prestigious form of domestic motorsport into small bits. An armada of stateside support then rallied the Watkins Glen cause. The gathering impetus also included the considerable influence of Mario Andretti. I'd like to see both Watkins Glen and Las Vegas happen, reckoned the former Formula One champion, but not one at the expense of the other. That shouldn't be. Andretti was also tasked to consider a boycott of the emerging Las Vegas event, an exercise the Lotus contracted drivers simply could not entertain. An American delegation of Mario Andretti, Tom Binford of ACUS, and Malcolm Curry of the Watkins Glen Grand Prix Corporation then traveled to Paris on December 13th, 1979 for a rare audience with the Executive Committee of FISA. There, the American emissaries awaited the final decree of the international motorsport body on the fate of the U.S. Grand Prix and the bucolic idol of upstate New York. Clifford Perlman, William McElnay, and William D. Weinberg of Caesars Palace also awaited word from Paris on their own Formula One ambitions, while Perlman also awaited his fate with the New Jersey Casino Control Commission. Caesars World then closed the year trading above $18 per share, an 80% increase in 18 months. Investors perhaps trafficking on whispers of aging mob kingpin Meyer Lansky, alleged heir apparent Alvin Melnick, and the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Bob, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Question from Don Capps.
Hey, Randy. Am I assuming now that you got a third book on the way? With our to add to your chapters on the Stardust and now the Caesars Palace and the upcoming race as well?
Bob, are you able to repeat the question? I couldn't quite make it out.
Randy, do you have a third book on the way?
Yeah, you have a third book on the way? Because
I have a third and a fourth that I'm working on.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's a very good presentation. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy, where can we purchase a copy of this book?
You know, I just thought of that. Let me get back to my, Bob, I'm going to, if I may, share the screen again.
It's on Amazon.
There was one more slide. Bob, am I on screen? If I'm on screen, if not, I'll just read it out. The book is available from the publisher, McFarlandBooks.com. I always like to mention Autobooks, Aerobooks.com out in Burbank. Tina and Chuck there have just a wonderful automotive and aerospace mom and pop bookstore. Their collection is amazing. It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, most online booksellers. Some people have had some nice things to say about it. Appreciate that very much, and it won a nifty little award. So it's out there and it's available. And again, I thank you very much for the opportunity to present. I appreciate your time very much.
All right, thank you, Randy. Any other questions? Jim?
To what extent do you think organized crime has played a role in Formula One globally over the years?
Bob, are you able to repeat the question?
Randy, to what extent do you think organized crime has had a presence in Formula One throughout the world?
Wherever there is tax-free liquidity to be gathered, I think organized crime probably has their hooks in it. Wherever there is organized gambling, whether it's legal or illegal, I think organized crime has their hooks in it. And so that's why I found a few convergences of the subject matter along the way. Bernie Ecclestone was and is an inveterate gambler, and so organized crime kind of followed him by way of wherever he placed his bets. One of the quotes that I found pretty early on was when casino ownership went public, casinos became owned by publicly traded companies, people assumed that the mob was going. Organized crime actors just had proxies place their stakes in the casino companies, and they got their skim out of the from the casino count rooms the same way they always did. Yes, it's digital now. Yes, there's online gambling now, but I don't think organized crime has ever left the subject. And to the extent that Formula One is a sport churning billions of dollars around the globe, I believe that wherever organized crime can find a tap into liquidity, they are prone to do so.
All right, thank you, Randy. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Bob.
And
Thank you,
appreciate you getting up.
attendees.
Appreciate you getting up so early in the morning to talk to us.
My pleasure.
All right.
Here's
All
the
right.
coffee.
Okay. It's now 7 o'clock your time, right? Okay. So,
Yep.
all right. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you,
Take
Ken.
care.